Hello, and welcome back to my Vestaria Saga Clemency mode low turn count playthrough. This entire video is going to be of the very long Chapter 3. So, despite being very early in the game, this map is long. So long, in fact, that with the exception of a 20-turn defense map later in the game, and an extremely long forced escort mission later in the game, Chapter 3 has the highest turn count of any map in this run. And there's really not that much to make it faster or to speed it up. It's just decided solely by how fast Zaid can walk. And the first thing that we do is, this is the first map where there are shops worth buying from. The on-the-map shops in Vestaria Saga are very good. There are lots of useful things to pick up. In particular, Prody bought 2 War Goddess swords for Merida, as well as a heal staff and 1 fire tome. So the War Goddess sword is an extremely powerful weapon that only an extremely powerful sword that only female units can use. So Troy cannot use it, but Merida can. And it's extremely powerful, hits on resistance, gives the user a large boost to resistance and a boost to, and completely negates all enemy criticals. So the War Goddess sword is a very good item to have. It makes training Merida a lot easier and faster, and also helps her in taking down some bulkier enemies, because her strength isn't always as high as you would like it to be, but with enemies typically having low resistance and the War Goddess sword being as strong as it is, it's fine. Merida can just kill with that. The other thing that's going on is that there is a raised section of the middle of the map surrounded by cliffs, which only light infantry, such as the 3 Elysia Simps from Luca Village, can climb up. And in the past video, I made a bit of a mistake, or I changed my strategy a bit. Dune will no longer be the first unit to promote, so now the focus is feeding kills to Ash. The question for a low turn count playthrough about whether you want to promote Ash first or Dune first largely comes down to whether you want a more reliable strategy in Chapter 6 or a more reliable strategy in Chapter 9. In Chapter 6, it's a lot more reliable if you have a promoted Ash, and in Chapter 9 it's much better to have a promoted Dune. But there is a member of the community called Artorias that is also working on low turn count runs in this game, and I was warned by them that without a promoted Ash, it can take 2 hours of rigging to get Chapter 6 to work properly, and the rigging I would have to do in Chapter 9, while not pleasant, is going to be much better than that. So I decided that I would make either chapter look far worse. I would go with the one that saves me more time. So Ash is now getting promoted first, which is also what you would typically want to do in casual play. So I've neglected to mention the mage who joins in the village to the bottom left. He is Theodel. He is Merrick, and Merrick is quite a strong mage. He does pretty much anything you want a mage to do. His defense isn't spectacular, he doesn't double naturally, but he hits on resistance and grows pretty well. And in fact, it's actually good because on Clemency mode, he actually one-hit kills a lot of enemies on this map. He nearly does it in Orthodox mode, but on Clemency mode he has just enough to do it. So Theodel is going to be a bit less useful here than he is in normal playthroughs, simply because, well, the first thing is that movement is at a premium, and he has infantry move. And also the Minister movement type, which Sestras and like Athol and mages have, does not allow you to walk up cliffs. So there are some situations where you need light infantry to walk up cliffs, and Theodel can't even help there, but when we can get him into combat, he's pretty good. Another useful perk of mages in Vestaria Saga is that a bunch of different tomes are effective against enemy classes you wouldn't expect them to be, such as thieves and brigands. The other unit who's just spawned is Caesar, and he is a thief and does thieving things. We need to run him all the way over to one side of the map in order to talk to someone to get another unit. And he is running away from the seize point all the way to the top left. So in this map there are two objectives, much like the last one. The first is to seize the area surrounded by 3 fighters in the top left, and the second is then to go all the way to the top right and seize the ruins there. And at this fork in the road, Zaid would ideally want to go north, but he cannot because there's a very scary enemy there, Valerius, who is literally invincible. It's hard-coded. Even if he weren't literally invincible, our units would not be able to deal with him. So we just run past him for now, and we'll have to backtrack later. He is so strong. He's not just an early boss showing up. He's not just an endgame boss showing up early like Garnet. He's likely the boss of another game showing up in this early installment just to bother us. So we have to go left, and there will be a lot of walking for Zaid. In the meantime, there are some enemies to clear out over here. So in the center of the map is the first example of an Arbalestier, who are sort of weaker ballista. People familiar with other Kaga games, Vestaria 776 and Berwick Saga, will come to fear long-range physical attacks like ballistas or Arbalestiers, but they really aren't too threatening for the most part in this game, though we do want to clear them out. And another reason to take control of the high ground here, even though it isn't directly in the path of any of our objectives, is that the shop there is the first shop in the game to sell the powerful cutlass. We used the one cutlass we got in the prologue to take out the Chapter 2 boss, and from here on out, once we start buying cutlasses, almost all of our combat by sword users will be done with cutlasses, because even though their might is not spectacular, brave weapons are brave weapons, and it's very easy to one-round enemies with cutlasses. There are also, in the bottom left, 2 bandits, as well as a thief with a deadly edge and a jewel knife. Deadly edges are weapons that some thieves have, which, upon hitting, reduce an enemy to 1 health. And they can be quite dangerous when paired with other enemies, but here it's not too bad because the thief that we're attacking, who has the deadly edge, likes to run instead of standing and fighting. We're leading with Merida for 2 reasons. First is that she generally leads because she has 9 move, which, in a map which takes many turns, allows her to establish a large lead over even Troy. And also, Troy is near capping a lot of his stats because he's just so strong, he's already killed so many things, so he doesn't need the kills as much, whereas we would like Merida to be a bit bulky. To the top right is another one of the side objectives of this map, or the first half of it, which is upon visiting the village nearest our starting position, you are told a sob story about how the statue beloved by a man's wife was stolen by the Yappa tribe to the northeast. And in order to get it back, we have to have someone examine the cave, but upon crossing the bridge, or standing on the bridge, it immediately makes all of the Yappa tribesmen go aggressive and try and kill you. So until we can get them to go unaggressive, we're having Proton just wait. Fighting them is very dangerous. They can kill you easily. A sort of embarrassing story is that once I was doing an Iron Man playthrough of this game, and I thought that you could have someone stand on the bridge but not cross it, and that wouldn't provoke the Yappa tribes people, but I was wrong, and my run ended there as a result of provoking them. So be very careful, you don't want to provoke them. The 3 enemies to the top left can be somewhat threatening. They all have crit on your units, if they don't have a crit negating item like the War Goddess Sword, because they all have a support with one another, and they're also on terrain which gives them a void. But thankfully, or unthankfully from a turn's perspective, Zaid ends up 1 square short of them, of seizing, so you can have him Adelstone down one of the bosses, and dispatch the others. From now on, a lot of reinforcements are going to be streaming in from the caves you can see. We sort of end up just outrunning them, because we finish the map before they can catch up with most of our units. And now everyone is congregating towards the center of the map because that is where the action is going to happen, because an event is about to happen that will get Valerius killed. And since Theodel has plenty of time because we're backtracking, he can actually contribute quite a bit here. He's quite good against enemies there. Now, with that out of the way, and our last 5-turn save, we seize, or liberate as it says here. And upon doing so, we get another unit we'll talk about later. And here you see real-life footage of an incel being mogged by a Chad. Halden, the edgy swordsman who joined us, who didn't join us and we had to kill, but is technically on our side, just got absolutely demolished by Valerius. You hate to see it. Somehow he lives, and we get him next chapter. Anyways, here is time for the most satisfying part of the chapter, where we buy a bunch of cutlasses. They cost 600 each, and we do throw away all of our money, but that's okay, we get plenty soon. And from now on, once we have those traded to the right units, we can say goodbye to not one-rounding, which is fun, because not killing things slows you down. There's still, however, a lot going on, and a lot of objectives to approach. So, the first one, which Troy is going to do, because he isn't needed at the top right, is if you visit the village that Theodel came from, you hear about a hideout that the thieves have, which unlocks another item for you. We also want Prody to visit that house. It doesn't actually do anything, but I thought it did, so I sent him there, and Prody is useless anyways. And Caesar just got us one of the best units in the game, and probably the second most handsome after Troy. Zayed is a gladiator, which is, for all intents and purposes, a promoted axe fighter, except it also has sword access, and access to swords allows you to use the fabulous cutlass, which makes Zayed more versatile than an axe fighter, and those growths aren't great. Stats don't get too high in this game, and Zayed has fantastic bases, and being footlocked isn't as much of an impediment in Vestaria Saga as in other games because there are a lot of cliffs you want people to walk up. He's a bit less useful than he is in normal playthroughs in this low turn count playthrough, but he's still quite useful and we use him whenever we need him. And don't worry about him stealing kills because that's fake. So the area near the last gate we have to seize is actually pretty well guarded and has a pretty interesting design. Namely, on both of the upraised areas, there are things with Franciscas, which, as mentioned before, have 3 range, and these 2 also have crit on some of your units, which makes it somewhat unreliable. However, there are some ways to get good avoid and to target them from the low ground, so it's not that big a deal. In normal playthrough where you don't care that much about turns, I would recommend having Zayed go in and kill everyone with his hatchet. That's a very powerful 2-range axe, but in a pinch and with the power of 5-turn saves, we are fine doing it this way. So I haven't yet talked about Sheila, who is the unit who just joined. She is a female archer with good growths and terrible bases. Sound familiar? She even has green hair, like another archer fitting that description. But she has 2 good things about her. The first is that she gives a support to Zayed, so supporting a good unit is something you can do even if you're terrible. And the second is that she has the skill Lightfoot, which gives her +1 move. It's the same one that Ash actually just learned. And there is one point in this playthrough where that is going to be important, and we're actually going to try and feed Sheila some kills over the course of this run in anticipation of that moment, but otherwise she's pretty useless. Troy is going towards that conspicuous tree, which is a thieves' hideout, where he will get a liquid strength, which is a stat booster that gives 1 to strength, and we're going to be saving that for someone who will need it a bit later in the playthrough. You might wonder why we have Jean, Bonicel, and Zayed hanging around near that tree instead of going and helping our intrepid warriors who are taking on a lot of bandits without very much help. And the reason is about to be clear. Caesar returned the poor village man's wife's heirloom, and you're about to see that appearances are not as they seem. And he was, in fact, a rogue and a scoundrel this whole time. And we can get items by killing him and bringing those items back to the Yappa Elder. So there are some items in Vestaria Saga that are droppable, but cannot be traded, and this is one of them. In the Japanese version, there is a glitch where you can send these items to the convoy and have anyone draw them out, but unfortunately in the English version of the game this was patched, which actually somewhat changes how LTCs of this game work. I'll tell you how in the relevant moments, but here it just, and depending on who returns the statue to the Yappa Tribe Elder, changes the reward. So the options are a powerful bow for Sheila that has very few uses, if she is the one who returns the statue, a strong axe that anyone can use if it's neither Sheila nor Zayed, or a very good axe if Zayed is that's personal weapon for him. And since Sheila is bad, and it's a pretty good axe and we like Zayed, we go and get his personal weapon. And as such, Zayed needs to be the one to kill the thief. But that's okay. It seems like we went a little too slow, but we have enough time to seize it. So there's an event where we find out how bad Halden got mobbed by Valerius, and we pick him up. We'll take him next chapter, though. He'll be benched forever, because Myrmidons are almost always bad. So there's one last area to storm. But first we visit the cave and get a liquid vitality by searching it, which is a +3 HP stat booster. And unlike when Alex Jones sells it, it actually works. So near the forest Troy just visited, 2 raiders emerge from the trees in a seeming death trap. In fact, you can see that the mighty Troy is almost killed and is left at 1 HP. Thankfully, the 2 people who spawn both possess deadly knives, and so one of them knocks Troy down to 1 HP, and the second, well, does nothing, because if you're at 1 HP, you're immune to the deadly knives. So they really aren't so deadly, all things considered. So I'm not entirely sure what the idea behind the design of this ambush was. Maybe they expected you to visit much later on and to not deal with the trailing reinforcements chasing after you. Whatever the reason may be, it's kind of irrelevant and we just don't care. One interesting thing about this boss is that you don't actually want to kill him too badly, because there's an event where if he's reduced to under half HP but survives by a round of combat, he drinks an elixir and switches weapon to a Morning Star. And a Morning Star is a 2-range axe, which is effective against minister-type units, which is not the best weapon, but it's nice to have. But once again, Zaid is 1 square short of being able to seize, so we take an extra turn, which makes killing the thief more reliable because he has really good avoid in his starting tile, but because we have an extra turn, we can flush him out of there and kill him when he has less avoid and still get the weapon we want. Ash just traded Zaid and took his personal weapon, and also took Thawmite, and Thawmites are items that you use to repair any weapon. And they're quite common in this game, which is good because Vestaria Saga has a huge amount of personal weapons that people want. And with this, pretty much the only thing left to do is talk to the Yappa Tribe Elder, and with that we complete all side objectives, except for getting the chest guarded by sentinels, but the only thing there is a dagger which can attack 5, which is a 5 times brave weapon, which sounds pretty good, but it breaks in 3 rounds of combat because it will take a scrub like Caesar 10 uses to kill anybody, and that's really just not that useful, so we skip it. This map is completed in 19 turns, making it the third longest map of this playthrough, turn-wise. We get a few more kills, and with that we seize, and I will see you next time.